Hey yo interneters, welcome back to another pin spinning video, and I guess this is part 2 of me learning the multiple thumb around. And if you haven't seen part 1 yet, I'll leave it up here for you to click so you can go check out that video. And with that being said, I guess we'll just start off where we last left off. And so after I posted the continuous fingerless thumb around part 1 video, I decided that I need to get right into practicing this and try to push out the second part as soon as possible because I don't want anyone to wait so long for part 2. But I was getting nervous because I actually wanted to dedicate an hour a day after the video that I posted for part 1 and every single day after that until I actually learned this trick. And so yeah, this first day after the video I posted, we're gonna fast forward through a lot of these part of the clips, but in actuality I spent a very long time. I'm not too sure, I'll have to go back and review the clip and see the actual time and the timer that I set. But even still, after all that long dedicated hour of practice, I still couldn't get it down. It was still horribly bad and I have no idea what's going on, and I was actually getting very nervous. My palm was sweating. I was thinking will this take me a lot, several months to learn? And so I think I spent close to about 3 hours, right? Yeah, it was about 3 hours, and after spending about 3 hours I had this crazy idea that popped into my head. And this idea came because when I'm doing the thumb around or the double thumb around, the pin usually ends up in this position where the pin is actually near the tip of the pin, or I'm holding it near the tip. And this provided a lot of inconsistency. It's very difficult to do another fingerless thumb around when the pin ends up in this position. But that's not really the case. I just used that as an excuse because I was doo-doo. Because of that, I thought of maybe if I use the pin mod that I made a while back ago where it's super lengthy and super heavy, maybe that would help me in actually preventing the pin from actually me catching it near the tip. To be honest, it shouldn't apply this way, but I was desperate. I needed any type of solution I could use to actually help me learn this multiple thumb around. And so I went ahead and then I just decided to use the pin to practice, as you know, I'm out of ideas. I don't know what I'm stuck on. I have to try something so I could push this second part out. And so yeah, I decided to go with this pin, and it was pretty weird in the beginning. I couldn't get it down just like the other pin, and it was feeling a little bit sloppy, but for some reason it felt smooth and it felt very comfortable. The heavy weight of it actually did something to it that made me feel very comfortable in spinning this pin. So before we go any further, I just want to make a disclaimer that this pin mod I made was just purely for fun, and it was just something that I was bored and I just decided to do, and then it would be cool to have some pin mod to write. And so this pin mod specifically is very lengthy and is very heavy. So it's not really good to actually use to practice pin tricks with. But if you're interested in actually learning how I made this pin mod, I'll leave the video up here for you to check out and click to see if you're interested in making one for yourself. And so even with me saying that, despite it not being good to learn pin mod, I actually learned several things using this pin mod when I'm actually trying to learn how to do the multiple thumb around. And so the question is, why did using this pin mod help me so much? And to be honest, I really don't know. If I had to guess, I think it's just purely because of this length and this weight. It's super heavy and super long, and because of that, when I'm doing the thumb around, the pin actually just spins itself just because of the momentum it carries because of how heavy it is. But to be honest, that's just a guess. I really don't know. Overall, here are the 5 things that I learned while using this pin mod. And so the first thing that was getting me caught up was the speed of my pin. I generally spin the pin pretty strong with a lot of power, and because of this, the pin spin really fast, just like how you see here. And doing this actually messes me up because when I spin the pin this strong, it's actually making me feel like I have no control over the pin to actually do the fingerless thumb around after doing the thumb around, and this caused me to be very inconsistent. And so when I'm actually taking the heavy mod, which is this right here, I can generate the same amount of force and do a powerful push, or the same push like I did with my lighter mod, and the pin will actually spin a little bit slower, right? And this is because the mod is actually really heavy, so it will take more force to actually push it to go the same speed. But since I'm doing the same push, it's actually a little bit slower, which by doing this allowed me to develop more control over the spin of the pin, or have more control of the pin, and this allows me to see things in a different light. And so the second thing I learned was sort of mentioned in part 1 video, but there's a bit more to it, right? And so Before in part 1 video, I mentioned that the center of mass of the pin, for this pin it will be indicated by this grip right here, that's right here, this center mass of the pin. And so when you're doing the thumb around, right, you want to keep the center mass of the pin supported by around this area of your fingers, right? And so it will continue to slide and roll on your, I guess you could say, the index portion of your fingers, and this acts as the support so the pin could kind of do is continue spin around, right? And so what you don't want is actually to have the center mass of the pin above this index finger. And so the reason why is because if it's above this, the pin will actually wobble like this, like it will actually point down this way. And if it does, it's very difficult for you to actually do a fingerless thumb around afterwards. And so the second most important thing that I learned was actually after you do the thumb around and then the center mass of your pin is actually spinning around here, the part that's important is actually this part. Whereas it's rolling on your index finger right here, this section of the pin actually has to start coming into your thumb. It has to find a way to find traction, or you have to find a way to actually have this bottom part touch your thumb so that it could continue to spin over. And so of course this portion on this lower part of the pin actually start touching here. It actually starts happening when you do like this forward flick motion, like you see when people do the multiple thumb around, like they have this forward flick motion, right? And so yes, the forward flick motion comes from a up forward. The forward comes from the thumb pushing this, and when it pushes this portion of the pin needs to connect with the thumb to actually complete a second thumb around. In my previous video, or the part 1 video, I mentioned that I did this jerk or forward flick motion with my wrist to actually bounce the pin upward, so it becomes like slightly aerial, like it's above, it doesn't have any contact between your hands, and that actually wasn't good for me. It made me lose more control over the pin than anything. And so the fourth thing is sort of similar to the last one that I mentioned, but it's more of the it's about the forward flick motion, but it's more of the timing than anything. So it's similar but not exactly. And so what I mean by that is, so basically after you do the double thumb around, right? So I mean not the double thumb around, right? So you do a thumb around and then you do a forward flick, you do a fingerless thumb around. And right when it gets to about right here, right, I would have a slight pause in my forward flick motion to do a second fingerless thumb around. And so the pin will actually get to about right here, and I would try to do a forward flick motion, but it would be too late and the pin will be moved, and like it will fall off my hand, right? And so that's the timing that I have. I don't know why I had the pause. I think it's because I was anticipating after the double thumb around, like after I do the double thumb around, like I would actually wait to see the pin get to about right here, and then I would do a forward flick. But by this time, this pin is moving. So by the time I see it right here, it's too late, and then it would actually fall off. And what needs to happen is right after you do this forward flick motion to do the fingerless thumb around for the first one, right when it gets about here, you would do another forward flick motion. So it's like forward flick motion right after the other. And the last thing that I figured out was actually the thumb position. And so I mentioned this a little bit and sort of like in the previous video of the angles, right? So most people like to hold the pin like somewhere right here and do a thumb around, or someone will hold it slightly closer and do a thumb around. But for me, I like to hold it right here, and it's very weird. Like it's not normal position to do a thumb around, I would guess you would say. Like I would actually hold it, my index finger right here, my middle finger right here, and then my index right here, and I actually just hold it slightly at an angle. This is the perfect angle for me. It's actually not horizontal like this, but it's actually like right here, or a little bit like somewhere right here, and it would be like doing almost like how I did the thumb around for the thumb around extended video. And so when I do the thumb around for this, right, it will go around my finger, and right when I'm doing the fingerless thumb around, right, my hand will be in this position, and then from there, when I do a forward flick motion, my thumb will actually reach out like this, and I would do the fingerless thumb around like this. I would push right here, right? And when I'm pushing right here, I mentioned before, like the contact of the pin needs to touch this, but it's impossible. It's very difficult when your thumb is in this position, right? Because we started here, but now we're ending up right here. And this is the problem that I was mainly having with the issues with the multiple thumb around. And so my thumb is right here, but then I started the thumb around right here. So this is not in the original position, which is bad. And so actually when you do a forward flick motion, the pin will start to spin, and you need to bring the thumb back here so it could get traction. And so as I was practicing all of those tips that I mentioned earlier, it was getting a little bit more better for me, especially using this pin mod, and eventually I managed to do my first continuous fingerless thumb round, or I added an extra fingerless thumb round to this pin mod. And then it started to become more frequent every now and then, right? It was getting more frequent than before. And this is when I was getting very comfortable with adding that extra fingerless thumb around to this pin trick. And so this is a great sign. And as I was getting very comfortable with this, I managed to eventually do it 3 times in a row, which basically means I'm done. And so, yeah, I managed to do the multiple thumb around on that pin mod, but the real question is though, can I actually do the multiple thumb around? Because if you think about it, this isn't a pin mod that I use often. I feel like this is like a training wheel on bikes, right? The real test is, can I actually do it on my main pin mod, my only pin mod, I would say. Let's take a look. I spent a total of 30 hours and 17 minutes in learning this trick, so yeah, it took a very long time. And then I dropped the pin 128,714 times. So yeah, it took me 2 weeks straight to actually add just an extra fingerless thumb round to the double thumb round. And so consistently, of course. And so from here, I'll just slowly add extra fingerless thumb round, and eventually I'll see how far I can go, and I'll update this video maybe on one of my other social media platforms if I ever get to using it again. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And like always, thanks for watching, and until next time.